reads at 406. He's got all the sensory equipment. It's a beautiful machine.
He's after me!
I don't doubt it.
What can I do?
Welcome to today's show. My name is John. As always, you can subscribe to the show on Apple Podcasts, formerly known as iTunes, or follow the links to social media in the podcast show notes. So please subscribe when you're finished listening. You can also go to classicmovierev.com to read notes, bios, and other random movie thoughts. Today's movie is Westworld, 1973. I love this movie. It is based on a Michael Crichton novel. Crichton also directed this film. It is so much better than the HBO series of the same name. The effects are somewhat less than we would like today, but this movie came from 1973. Also, this movie, like much of Crichton's work, is Jurassic Park. Just replace the dinos with robots. This movie is rated 7.0 on IMDb.com and 86% on the RottenTomatoes.com Tomatometer. Renee Schofield of Common Sense Media states, quote, "Still surprisingly effective given the primitive nature of the visual effects. Westworld is a clever hybrid of sci-fi and old-time western. The film's impact, with its fledgling robotics and simple story, relies upon humor, surprise, and some startlingly bloody visuals of death and destruction. The whole movie is the offspring of Frankenstein and the forerunner of many other films that show a genius creator threatened by his creation. Notably, writer-director Michael Crichton followed this movie with Jurassic Park, first a book, then a classic movie, in which an ambitious industrialist creates another manufactured resort, with dinosaurs. Westworld was a box office winner in 1973 and has retained a strong fan base ever since." Unquote. So let's get going. Actors.
Right, and I'm a Shakespearean actor.
Yul Brynner is fantastic as the robot gunslinger. Wearing black, Brynner is clearly channeling Chris from The Magnificent Seven, 1960. Brynner was covered in episode 68, The Buccaneer, 1958. Macho Man James Brolin played the tough guy John Blaine. Brolin was first covered in Maroon, 1969. Majel Barrett has a small role as Miss Carey, brothel manager. Barrett was covered in episode 68, The Buccaneer, 1958. Richard Benjamin plays timid Peter Martin. Benjamin was born in 1938 in New York City.
I'm walking here! I'm walking here!
He attended the High School for Performing Arts and then attended Northwestern University, where he was involved in numerous plays. Benjamin married the wonderful Paula Prentice in 1961. They worked together in television and were both in Catch-22 1970 and a horror send-up Saturday the 14th, 1981. Benjamin starred in Goodbye Columbus 1969 and stayed busy with films like Diary of a Mad Housewife 1970 until 1973 when he was cast as the meek guy in Westworld 1973. He scored big in comedy with The Sunshine Boys 1975. In my opinion, his funniest movie was Love at First Bite 1979, playing Van Helsing to George Hamilton's Dracula. He tried to save his beautiful girlfriend, played by Susan St. James. Good luck saving her from George Hamilton. He got into directing, and it was not long before he received an Oscar nomination for the film My Favorite Year, 1982, with Peter O'Toole playing a washed-up Errol Flynn character. Benjamin is still active. Dick Van Patten had a small role as a banker. Van Patten was born in 1928 in New York City.
I'm walking here! I'm walking here!
Van Patten began acting as a child and began on Broadway at 7 years old. He was eventually in 27 Broadway plays. He has done a lot of television shows and movies, but he is known for one particular role on television. He played the dad of a large family on 8 is Enough, 1977 to 81. His most well-known movies include a small role in Soylent Green, 1973, Freaky Friday, 1976, High Anxiety, 1977, Robin Hood Men in Tights, 1993, and Spaceballs, 1987. He died in 2015. Story.
Let me explain. No, there is too much. Let me sum up.
The movie begins with an infomercial for Delos. Odd, because infomercials weren't invented yet.
Hi, Ed Renfrew for Delos again. If there's anyone who doesn't know what Delos is, well, as we've always said, Delos is the vacation of the future today. At Delos, you get your choice of the vacation you want. There's medieval world, Roman world, and of course, Westworld. Was it worth $1,000 a day? Contact us today.
The reporter is interviewing people as they depart Delos. There are 3 worlds in Delos: Westworld, sometimes called Western World, Rome World, and Medieval World. Beyond adventures with robots, it seems like a place where middle-aged people can get laid. They make a big deal out of the $1,000 a day cost. You wouldn't get far on that now. On the shuttle to Delos, buddies Peter Martin, Richard Benjamin, and his friend John Blaine, James Brolin, are traveling to Westworld. John has been there before and is supremely confident. Peter is nervous. Peter asks endless questions about guns and equipment.
I'm not worried at all. I'm just curious. How much do they weigh?
3 or 4 pounds.
That heavy? Did they have much of a kick? A Colt 45? Well, I never fired one before. Hey, what about the thing where you go like this over the gun?
Fanny.
Yeah. What about it? Is that hard to do?
All of Delos and the 3 worlds are controlled from a massive underground complex. The travelers are given colored badges indicating their destination. Once the shuttle has landed, the visitors are taken to a sub-level and ride a tram to their world. Peter says looking at the hands is the only way you can tell if someone you are talking to is a robot. The voice over the loudspeaker encourages them to enjoy their every whim. They also say nothing can go wrong. John, Peter, and a banker, Dick Van Patten, are given clothes and gear from the Old West. The newcomers arrive in a western town by stagecoach. They are checked into their room by an old-timey robot character. Peter is still pining over his ex-wife. The 2 cowboys head to the saloon. John says there is no way to get hurt in Westworld.
This place, it doesn't matter. It may look rough, but it's still just a resort.
A gunslinger, Yul Brynner, walks into the bar and bumps Peter. The gunslinger starts insulting Peter.
Sloppy with your drink. Give this boy a bib.
Go on.
He needs his mama.
Kill him.
John encourages Peter to kill the gunslinger. The crowd clears as the robot and man face off. Peter easily beats the gunslinger. Later, John explains to Peter that the guns have sensors that won't let them fire at anything with a body temperature. A man from the shuttle, Norman Bartold, who is looking at his wife with a sneer, is shown in Medieval World lustfully looking for a robot to have sex with. The 2 cowboys head to the local cat house for a little fun. Peter is not too sure that the women are robots, but he goes along. Peter confesses to his robot that he's never been with a prostitute before.
I haven't ever had a, well, I hardly know you, if you know what I mean. We just met a few minutes ago, and, you're probably very nice.
But he goes along. Peter's robot makes crazy eyes at the end of sex. John comes back and gets Peter, who is really having a good time now. That night, as the guests sleep, crews come from below and collect the damaged robots. They are taken below ground for repairs. They even have robot horses. With hidden doors to the underground complex, it reminds me of Disney. Hundreds of technicians and banks of mainframe computers are at work. The supervisor, Alan Oppenheimer, begins to notice a lot of similar malfunctions in the robots. 6 weeks earlier, the breakdowns began to double. It has spread through all 3 worlds. They liken the spread to a virus, and this is long before computer viruses were known. They say they have trouble conceiving of a disease among machines.
What's he in for?
Central malfunction. The day we opened the resort, we had a failure and breakdown rate conforming to computer predictions. Until about 6 weeks ago. Then Roman World had a rise in breakdown rate which doubled in a week. In addition, we saw a disproportionate rise in central as opposed to peripheral breakdowns. Well, despite our corrections, the breakdown rate continued to climb. Then medieval world began to have trouble. Now we're seeing more Western world breakdowns. And there's a clear pattern here which suggests an analogy to an infectious disease process, spreading from one resort area to the next.
Perhaps there are superficial similarities to disease.
It's only a theoretical concept. There are many ways to order that data.
I must confess, I find it difficult to believe in a disease of machinery.
The supervisor reminds him that some of the robots have been designed by other computers and they're not sure how they work. In the morning, the techs restart the amusement park. While John and Peter are getting dressed, the gunslinger comes in and pulls a gun on John. Peter hears what's going on inside and crashes through the door, shoots and kills the robot who flies through the window. The sheriff locks Peter up for murder. This gives John a chance to plan a jailbreak. It would be a good joke to leave his buddy in the cell for the entire vacation. John uses an Indian girl to smuggle a note to Peter. John brings the horses around and the back of the jail blows out. I don't know what was in the coffee. John kills the sheriff and they ride away into the desert as outlaws. For medieval world, the techs below send an infidelity command to the queen robot so that Mr. Lears can have sex with her. He goes to the queen and is told that the Black Knight has returned and wishes to have a battle with him. The techs ramp up the programming for the guest's last day in town. The banker guest takes over as sheriff. Mr. Lears runs into a serving girl robot in his world, while out in the west a rattlesnake sneaks up on John and Peter. John starts shooting, but the snake bites him. Hey, he was attacked by a rattlesnake in Maroon 1969 also. They eventually kill the snake, and it's a robot. The robot snake should not have been able to strike the guest. Later, the techs pick up the snake for a total examination. They find that there is no mechanical reason why the snake should strike. The supervisor wants to shut down for a month. He is overruled. At medieval world, the Black Knight makes mean eyes at Mr. Lears. John and Peter are in a bordello in Westworld when a bar fight breaks out. They join in the Donnybrook and have a great time beating the robots. The banker sheriff comes in and joins the fight too. Below ground, the techs are repairing the gunslinger and giving him an upgrade to infrared vision and increased hearing. In medieval world, Mr. Lears is putting the moves on the serving girl robot. The girl robot flatly refuses to have sex, which is a clear violation of our programming.
I think we ought to get to know each other better, Daphne.
Better, my lord?
I can reward you well.
My lord.
Daphne.
My lord.
Daphne.
My lord forgets himself.
She is taken below and examined. They can't find any reason for the violation. Mr. Lears gets ready to fight. John and Peter wake up in the destroyed bordello with decent hangovers. In medieval world, the Black Knight calls out Mr. Lears. The queen comes down and the man begins to fight the robot. Contrary to programming, the Black Knight kills the guest. The supervisor below starts cutting power. The gunslinger is waiting in the street for John and Peter. The supervisor orders all power cut since they can't get the robots to respond. John decides to fight the gunslinger and is killed by the robot. Peter runs for it as the gunslinger follows. Peter grabs a horse and gets out of town. The gunslinger gets a horse and calmly follows. The tech supervisor realizes that the robots are running on stored power and some can last up to 12 hours. Roman world becomes a bloodbath as the robots fall on the helpless humans. Tech Control tries to turn the power back on, but the relays are frozen. Peter rides into the desert and the gunslinger keeps following. The robot's pixelated vision is shown as he follows Peter. One of the techs lets the supervisor know that the doors are electrically powered and they can't get out.
Listen, how are we going to get out of here? All these doors are electrically powered.
I get these doors open in here before we all suffocate.
In a small canyon, Peter sets up an ambush for the gunslinger. However, the robot sees it and gains the advantage, almost killing Peter. The techs are slowly dying of lack of air in their below-ground center. Peter runs into a technician who is stranded in the desert. The man is so scared he is of no help. The tech tells Peter that the robot has all of the new technology and he has no chance.
Let me see your hands. You're a guest. Gunslinger. Must be a model 404, maybe a 406. He's a 406. He's got all the sensory equipment. It's a beautiful machine.
He's after me!
I don't doubt it.
What can I do?
There's nothing you can do. If he's after you, he'll get you. You haven't got a chance.
There must be something!
Fella, don't kid yourself. There are things you could try. Acid for his visual system. Noise for his hearing. No matter what you did, he'll always be one jump ahead of you. You haven't got a chance.
Yes, I do.
He does say acid can be used against the visual system and noise against the audio system. Oddly helpful. He tells Peter that he still doesn't have a chance. Peter definitively states, "Yes, I do." The gunslinger kills the tech as Peter rides away. Peter rides out of Westworld into Romeworld. He has a small lead over the gunslinger because he couldn't be tracked while he was riding in a stream. For some reason, he leaves the horse to run through the destruction of Roman world. He finds a manhole cover that leads to the tech area. It's reminiscent of the Time Machine 1960. Watch out for Morlocks. Peter finds that all of the techs are now dead. The gunfighter follows him underground. Peter just happens to find a bottle of hydrochloric acid. He lays on the table and pretends to be a broken robot. He throws the acid into the robot's face. It's not long before the gunslinger is chasing Peter again. The batteries in the gunslinger's pistol die. Peter flees topside and ends up in the banquet hall of Medieval World. It's not long until the gunslinger arrives, but his vision is damaged. When Peter gets near a torch, the gunslinger can't see him. Peter makes a noise, and the gunslinger lunges at him. Peter sets him on fire. Peter wanders through the castle until he finds a female chained in a dungeon begging for help. He unchains her and gets water for her. When she drinks the water, she bursts into flames as she is a robot.
All right. It's all right. It's okay. All right, all right. You're going to be all right. Go ahead. Go ahead and drink. I'm trying to help you.
No.
Peter is walking away in shock when the burned gunfighter shows up again. However, it falls to the ground and finally burns out. Peter sits on the steps in shock and exhaustion, and the catchphrase for Delos, "Have we got a vacation for you?" echoes in his mind.
Boy, have we got a vacation for you, vacation for you, for you, for you.
World famous short summary. Buddy trip ends poorly. I hope you enjoyed today's show. I really appreciate you spending the time listening. You can find connections to social media and email on my site at classicmovierev.com. There are links in the podcast show notes as well. Remember, the show is completely free and independent. All that I ask is you jump over to Apple Podcast and give me a review. It really helps the show get found. Beware the Moors.